Welcome to More Than Miles, the podcast created to look deep into what it means to be a runner and endurance athlete. Our episodes are filled with real stories from real runners, elite to the everyday athlete. We bring together healthcare providers, athletes, and dive deep into topics that matter most to runners. I'm Dr. Mihevc Edwards, physical therapist, author, athlete, and complete coffee addict.
And I'm Dr. Kacy Seynders, physical therapist, athlete, and pun expert extraordinaire. We're so passionate about changing running culture to improve the health, wellness, and fulfillment of our endurance athlete community. And we hope that these conversations inspire you to focus on putting your health first so that performance and PRs can follow. Now let's get to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to More Than Miles. Today, Kate and I are very excited because we were connected with Stella Dillard, who is a local chef here in Atlanta, by our mutual friend, Lita, who, shout out to Lita. She's a behind-the-scenes superstar of the podcast. So we are very excited to finally meet you. We've heard so much good things. We've got to taste some of your food, which is excellent. So we are really excited to get to talk about it today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Good.
New year, new me, as I say.
I'm enjoying the sunshine and the fact that I'm not wearing real clothes. I'm in a sweatshirt and yoga pants today.
Yeah, I am also rocking the hoodie, but that's because I just was in a freezer and it's cold in there.
Well, what were you doing in the freezer?
I was pulling out butter. I'm making some cookies this week. Oh, and I was pulling out ground chicken for chili. So yeah, it's not very chilly weather out there today, but it's a customer fave.
That sounds good to me.
We have to use our imaginations a little bit here in Georgia with the seasons.
Right.
I know I do have all these really warm clothes that I think I'm going to get to wear every year, and I never do. It's okay. So let's talk a little bit about your athletic journey. We do want to talk about your business, Dandelion Food and Goods.
Sure.
And we're really excited to talk about that because, as Kacy mentioned, you were so kind to give us some food to taste, and it was really good. I couldn't believe how much flavor was in every bite that I took. So that was really lovely. But this is a running podcast, and we want to start kind of talking about that athletic journey first. So go ahead.
Sure. So I came to being more physically active and to running later in life, actually. I was not an active kid. My mom had been a dancer, like professionally, before she had kids. And so that was always like the avenue that she would point us towards, which meant that I did a lot of like 1 or 2 years of some sort of dance thing. And it was just never my favorite. And so I never really like developed that practice that a lot of people do. But in my 20s, I decided that I wanted to cook professionally. And it took about 6 months of once a week working a brunch shift for no money. And I realized that this was a physically demanding job and I was not strong enough to do it. And so I did what a lot of like folks who are in their early 20s and don't know anything do. And I went and I ran on a treadmill like 4 days a week at Georgia State because I was taking classes there and it was free. That was the only like fitness practice that I had. I got a lot of positive feedback because, of course, what happens when you're a woman and you lose weight, everybody's like, oh my gosh, you're doing so well. Stayed kind of like that for a while. My partner and I moved to England. And when we moved back, all of our friends had left the city. So we joined a running group and started running regularly, picked up a copy of the Women's Health Big Book of Exercises.
I know that book.
Needs to know how old I am. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a classic book. It was like one of the first ones out.
Right. And I like got my dumbbells in my living room and oh man. Yeah. You gotta love the odds, man. But that was when I first like started doing some strength training. It was just a supplemental thing. And then I signed up for a couple of half marathons, and every time I ran a half marathon, I would have some sort of weird knee pain, never anything major. Finally, like the second time I went to go see a physical therapist, she was like, you need to start really strength training. You need a trainer or someone who's going to like push you to get beyond the same weight you've been at, lifting weight you've been at for 6 months.
I like that PT. That sounds like a good PT.
She was a good PT. She gets the question a lot whenever we're talking. I'm like, can't we just like make ourselves stronger and fix this problem? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes now the answer is no, you have to buy new shoes. But yeah, so I did that for a while. Then my trainer moved to Denmark and she'd given me this wonderful foundation. I felt really confident in the gym. I was able to keep like progressing with my strength and I wanted to get really strong and I was getting a little bored. And so I signed up for a triathlon. That was in 2020. It got canceled, but I stayed with the coach. I've done 3 Olympic distance triathlons now and 1 half Ironman. And I really enjoy it. I get to be strong. I get to not do one thing for too long. In the kitchen, I'm on my feet all day. So like running for me is fraught. You know, there are times when it's great and it's wonderful. And there are times when like, I think we're on like month 4 or 5 of trying to figure out why my feet hurt in this specific way that they've been hurting for a while. And we get close and then like, you know, I'll backslide or go work 14 hours or something. So I don't think it's necessarily an uncommon way for a lot of folks who weren't necessarily athletes in high school or college to kind of come into it later in life. I think you're always trying to like balance what you're doing, the life you're trying to live, the various aches and pains we all get.
What do you do to kind of counteract the fact that you're on your feet for 14 hours a day and then also you're running or you're cycling or you're swimming and you're really doing a lot of physical work all the time? So what do you do to rest and recover or kind of balance that out?
That is also kind of it's always evolving. It's always ongoing. For rest and recovery, I'm really adamant about sleep. Like I have 1 or 2 nights a week where I will get less than 7 hours, but otherwise, like if nothing else gets done, it is training, work, and sleep have to happen every day. I started a couple months ago. I was having a hard time just like getting into recovery where I could tell I wasn't recovering from workouts. It kind of came out of the blue. Nothing else seemed to have changed. I've started doing a little bit more conscious deep breathing exercises, especially right after workouts. It's great when you're doing a cool down in the pool because it can just very much be part of that. And that's for my body, that seems to work really well. That helped a lot. I'm very fortunate. I am a very good sleeper. I am surrounded by really good food. And the only other thing that I try to do is to be conscious of like pain levels and ergonomics in the kitchen. So I have an anti-fatigue mat that like, as much as I hate going and dragging it out because anything that sits on the floor for 8 hours, even if you wash it, it's disgusting. No one wants to touch it. It's so gross.
Yeah. Can't blame you
Just
there.
like, yeah, I know it's a mental thing. I know how I clean it and I know it's very clean and I'm still like, oh God, I gotta go get the mat. But I get the mat, I sit down like I'm sitting right now. You know, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would be like, oh yeah, standing for me. It's like a shark swimming. Like I'm just always going to do it. And now I'm like, no, you sit down.
I love that. It's like a shark swimming.
I would tell people that. Like I would go out to like social events and not know how to sit down because I've been standing all day. And now it's like, no, you gotta take care of that. So those are the things I found to be most helpful. That and like trying to be mindful of eating for recovery.
Yeah.
Getting protein, getting it when I need it. Those are my current big things that are like always living in the front of my brain diet wise.
That's a really good recovery routine that most people don't think of. I mean, I do think, you know, when we think of recovery as PTs, we do think of sleep. We do think of nutrition and breathing or meditation, whatever works for you, and just doing something other than being on your feet all the time. And so you've nailed it, Stella.
Yeah. You know, this is what, year 3, but yeah, so far it's feeling like I focused a little bit more since the new year on the nutrition part of it. I didn't want to count calories. I've had bad experiences with that. I even found like counting macros alone kind of pointed me down that same road. And so it was just like, well, maybe listen when people say, eat this much protein right after your workout and again 2 hours later. You can't just like have a protein shake and then be like, I'm good to go for 6 hours. It is shocking how quickly that's made a difference. So.
Yeah. How has your the development of your recipes and your like how you think about your recipes changed since you've become more of an athlete? Has it changed at all?
It actually, I got a lot more deliberate about it, or got the education to be more deliberate about it long before, at least a couple of years before I became an athlete. I was working at Empire State South here in Atlanta as a butcher. And for anyone who doesn't know, it sounds like a really cool job. It is an amazing job to be a restaurant butcher. It is so much fun. It does not pay. You are a prep cook. So you are on the very low end of that rung. And I took a job writing recipes for a meal kit delivery service that was here in Atlanta and used all local ingredients, or mostly local ingredients, which meant that I got to work with a dietitian for every recipe I wrote. And what was super cool about that was I was the one chef they had who didn't have a cookbook and didn't have an agent. So I didn't really get like a whole lot of say in which recipes I would do. And I wasn't super picky about it. I was like, all right, whatever you need. Nobody else wanted to do vegan and vegetarian recipes. So in addition to like getting to work with a dietitian, I got to work with a dietitian to write vegan and vegetarian recipes. And I would get the like, usually it was, you need to put more protein in this. That was the first thing that I learned. It was like, put more protein in it. As a restaurant chef, of course, I got told to like dial down fat a little bit. Even though they weren't like trying to be low fat, but they were like, this is a lot. That's a lot of fat. You gotta, it's a lot.
So it makes it good. Come on, Stella.
I'm like, can we talk now? I'm like, can we talk about satiety, please? But then I didn't know that.
Healthy
then
fats.
I was like,
fats are healthy.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then I was just like, fine. We'll have the fat. It's fine. It taught me to keep a little bit of an eye on sodium as well, which was really helpful. The next job that I got was at the Shepherd Center, and working in a hospital kitchen. Of course, you're working with a lot of low sodium patients. The one easy part of that job was I could go in and be like, well, I know that if we get rid of all of these cans, we'll get rid of a lot of the sodium that we're trying to cut out for patients.
What do you mean? Fresh is better?
What?
What is that? What is that?
Yeah. I mean, y'all have worked in healthcare, you know.
It's so hard though. I mean, luckily, our population is generally pretty good, but it is easy. It is easy to forget that when you're rushing around and your lifestyle is really busy, and you just are trying to get food in your body because you're trying to recover from a workout and then work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or something that we see a lot of. I'm in 2 farmers markets with community farmers markets here in Atlanta, and we really try to make good food available to as many people as possible. When you are stuck with the obscenely low budget that most people have for food, if they are receiving any kind of food assistance, cans are cheap, so cheap compared to fresh, and there's the time question, like you said.
I love our farmers market where I live. We have a farmers market every week.
Which one?
So I live in Serenbe.
Oh, yes. You got a nice farmers market.
Yeah.
We know farmers markets.
Well, I wasn't sure I was going to say where it was, but yes. And then we've got our farm, so we can walk over and get things. And it's unbelievable, the difference until you start doing it. Like just eggs, for instance. I cannot eat store-bought eggs anymore. I just absolutely cannot, because they're so much better from the farm.
Yeah. I mean, I see it. Eggs. I work with eggs every week. We always offer a salad with an egg or without. And there's obviously that to it. But for me, the big, with running this business, with never having enough time, because it's still largely just me in the kitchen. Lita helps me out once a week. I have another part-time person who's out most of this month. So I'm getting really into it. I would order for what I thought I could do in a week and not get to everything and be really worried about the vegetables. And I've been working with, these are all the same farmers I worked with for a dozen years, probably. I was very familiar with their products, but I'd been at Shepherd Center for a couple of years. I'd gotten very used to commodity produce again and how fragile and how perishable it was. And I'd forgotten that most of that stuff, most of what you're seeing in a lot of grocery stores it's 7 days old before a customer touches it.
Wow.
Where I'm getting stuff 2 days after it's been picked. Yeah. It is a totally different ballgame. And it shows in like the micronutrients that we get in the veggies as well.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have this picture, and this happens every day. There's the little farm stand when Andy gets off the bus. My son gets off the bus on Fridays. There's a little farm stand that I usually bring up from the farm that has like eggs and carrots. And Andy just walks over every time, gets a whole handful of carrots that were just picked and starts eating them with all the greens hanging off. And just that's what he eats for a snack. And it's so incredible because I never would have had access to any of that when I was a kid. It's always shocking. Every time I see it, I just think how great it is and also how different it is than so many other people.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, I remember when baby carrots were like the new hotness. Oh God.
Now that is a quote. I remember.
Oh, no. They came to Publix and we were like, trendy. We are so fancy right now.
So tell us a little bit about your beginnings as a chef and how your passion for food grew over time.
I started cooking, again, another thing I came to later in life than most people do. I started in my mid-20s. I had gone to college a little bit early, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and figured like more school was definitely the way to figure it out. It was not. I got an office job. I didn't do well at that. I had a hard time with like sitting down and working. I also had a really hard time with like not producing something concrete at the end of the day. I had gone back to Georgia State. I enjoyed, the first time around, I think I'd been an English major, which how do you tell the world that you don't know what you want to do with yourself without actually saying it out loud?
Be an English major.
Be an English major. Especially, don't concentrate. Just, I like to read. So
Words are cool, I guess.
Yeah. So I signed up for a journalism degree at Georgia State, changed my major. It's like, this is a job that people have. And I graduated in 2007 when everything was turning into blogs. Newspapers were dying off by like the hundreds every year. Nobody really knew how journalists were going to make money anymore. And I'd always liked cooking. My office job was selling restaurant equipment. So I'd been kind of tangential to that world. And I'd gotten to see what people in kitchens were doing. And it just really appealed to me. It looked so fulfilling. It looked like so much fun. I mean, all the things that get people into the kitchen at first, right? You're like, oh my God, I can make food all day and I can be around the best food. And
Were you ever influenced by Food Network? I need to know.
No.
Okay.
I mean, like I loved my early Alton Brown because I am a big old nerd.
Oh, Alton's the best.
Yeah. I would, when I was like at home working on like stories for school, or there was one semester where I did like a long ass research paper and just needed my background noise. Yeah. Good Eats marathons were the way I would do it.
Love it.
It was so cool. And it was helpful. So I had the choice to make at the end of my time at Georgia State. I'd been volunteering at a place here in Atlanta called Cafe 458, which served food to people in a homeless outreach program during the day, during the week. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, we would serve brunch to the paying public to raise money for it. And the nice thing about that was it was volunteers. They couldn't ask for experience. And they had like a couple of for real chefs. One of them had come from Buckhead Life Group restaurants. And the other one was a big fancy club chef here in Atlanta. And so there were actual chefs running the kitchen. They worked with me every Sunday for like 18 months before I graduated. And I went down to help one of them open his restaurant in Amelia Island, Florida for like spring break and semester breaks my last year. And I was like, all right, I'm really excited. I'm going to go to culinary school. And he's like, oh man, I don't know. It's not great. It's a lot of money. And it was like between $17,000 and $40,000 in tuition. Nothing was subsidized. And whether you went to culinary school or not, you were getting out and making $10 an hour. He was like, I would go find a really good chef to work for. That's how I would do it. And so I did. I lucked out. I got a job at Woodfire Grill here in Atlanta. The chef at the time was Michael Toohey, and he was one of the first really big farm-to-table chefs in the city. He taught me whole hog butchery. He taught me bread bakery, or his pastry chef taught me bread bakery. He didn't fire me, which when you're a first year culinarian, that's really big. Like I cost him a lot of money. So from day one, I've been able to work with local farms. I've seen what that seasonality means, and it can be as amazing as like all that summer bounty in August and September. And it can be what we're about to get in like February and March, where would you like turnips or would you like kale? Those are or you can have a lettuce. We have one lettuce, but getting to work with that throughout the year and really just like develop that muscle memory around, okay, right, this is what this season means. At the time, I had no appreciation for how rare it was. And then, I've worked at a bunch of different restaurants here in Atlanta. I worked at Holman and Finch for a total of 4.5 years. I worked at Farm Burger as a company chef. I was at Storico Fresco as their retail chef for a while. I was over at Empire State South. And then when the pandemic happened, I had just taken a job at a hotel. I was just working as a line cook and getting my feet under me. I hadn't wanted to stay at Shepherd Center, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I didn't think I wanted to be a restaurant chef, but maybe I did. Wasn't really sure. It was like, just get some more practice being in kitchens like you used to, being around food like you used to. I was there for 6 weeks, and then everything shut down. The hotels were some of the first businesses to shut down. I looked the other day, I sent out my first email menu on the 16th of March. And by that point, I'd already been laid off for, I think, a week. I didn't know what to do, but I didn't want to just like sit around and watch everything kind of implode. And that's how it seemed like it was going to happen at the time. So I started a business. All my friends were missing restaurant food. And I was like, I know what to make for you.
That is awesome. What a great way. And only a week after. So I'd like to say your foresight was incredible. Like the fact that you were like, you know what, this is not going to work. It's not going to work for a while. I'm just going to start this business and go for it. That's great. If I had known about you, I definitely would have used you all the time during the pandemic.
That was a lot of our customers were old friends of mine who they were like, suddenly I am at home all of the time with the kids. There's no safety valves, That was like the first, year of the business was folks like that.
And how has it changed since?
So now I'm at farmers markets. That is the majority of my sales. When I first started, I was online only, having just watched a very nice restaurant in a very nice hotel that was paying very nice rent for that building, have to just shut down with no promise of when they'd reopen. I did not want a storefront. I didn't want to pay for like prime retail space. I was like, stick me in a basement and give me a website. Those are things I'm willing to pay for. So that was how we started, all online. I would load up my little Prius and drive around the city and do deliveries. Now I am in 3 farmers markets every week. We're at Oakhurst and Morningside on Saturdays. We're at Grant Park and Avondale Estates every other Sunday. We alternate. I still have the website. I still do sales. I have a pickup location, the kitchen that I'm in. I'm really fortunate to be right by Krog Street Market. So it's super centrally located and I can offer pickups on site. I still do deliveries, but I have a driver now. And she does deliveries Thursdays and Fridays are my 2 delivery days. I think those are the big changes. The products have not changed a lot. Still soup, still casseroles. Every week there's a really like hearty salad with whatever I've got a lot of. When I have time, I'll do treats like cookies. I always offer granola. I toyed with, and I still love the idea, I have this beautiful fantasy of a like absolutely gorgeous grocery store with a wonderful, rich prepared food section. I've not branched out as much as like the first 6 months. I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be offering like retail milk. It's like, no, we'll stick with the things that people actually buy and that, they come to me specifically for.
Yeah. That's a hard thing when you start a business to know, to kind of hone it in that way. And even 3 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years into a business, it just changes every single year. Right. So what you thought you were going to do in year 1 is not always where you are year 3, year 5, year 7, no matter how well you are, how
Yeah.
Plan it out, you know?
Yeah. And, it's certainly true. Like this is year 3. Yeah. Going into year 4. And after the first farmers market season, I was so happy with that. I was like, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to go into more and more and more and more farmers markets. And it's not as scalable as I want it to be. So now it's like, okay, well, what does a wholesale plan look like? And that's cool. It's fine. What you learn, surprising fact about chefs that nobody really thinks about, we are pretty good at like basic math. We can do a lot of it because you have to do a lot of it. And so there's secretly a certain part of most chefs' brains that like we all have our one cleaning task that we secretly love. And that just
yours is not the mat, I'm assuming.
No, mine is not the mat. I will organize a walk-in though. Oh man, an organized walk-in, my favorite thing. I did have a chef though. He loved the floors. He would, if you came in and he was sweeping, you were like, okay, it's been a rough morning and you just need this time. But we also, sometimes you just sit down and you look up an hour later and you're like, all those numbers, they're right. They're good. They're telling me the truth. So, that's another kind of fun.
Now I know how I didn't end up a chef. Cleaning and numbers.
Numbers. Yeah.
Cleaning and numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. PTs are not known for their math skills at all.
I worked in kitchens for years from the time I was like 14 or 15 all the way through graduate school. And I loved it. It can be a really fun environment as long as you know what your boundaries are and how you want to live.
Yeah.
But it is a fun thing. But no, I think numbers and cleaning, not for me.
No.
I think you told us as you were kind of telling the story behind your business, but I'm wondering if the answer would be different if I asked this directly. So I was wondering, like, what was your mission in founding the company? Did you have a mission, or was it really just like people need food and I'm going to make food for them?
Yeah, I mean, that was very, very much the first while of doing it was people need food. I'm going to make food. I don't want to think too hard about like what I'm supposed to do with my life if I'm not going to be cooking, because things stayed closed for a while. And I'm 40 now. Like I am old to be in kitchens. So when you're sitting there and you're like in your late 30s at a line cook job, you're like, oh man, is this really it?
Did I miss the boat somewhere?
Yeah. Should I? And it's one of those things like, you always look at those counterfactuals, right? Like maybe the thing to do would have been to like take 2 weeks, take some breaths, figure out some retraining. But instead I did this, and I'm trying to think. So I was at that point 1 month into training for my first triathlon. The triathlon had not yet been canceled, but it would be. And I had always been, or not always, but at this point I had been for at least 10 years, pretty active, living a life that involved a physically active job, not necessarily eating like I should. In a kitchen, there's a lot of tasting. That's how you get a lot of your calories every day. You get like one meal provided every day in most restaurant kitchens. And then everything else you need to eat, that's on you. You might be able to like scrounge something together from your line. That's great. You might have to bring a lunch. You may or may not get like actual break time to eat, or it may be really weird hours because you're eating when other people aren't eating, basically. And suddenly I was alone in a kitchen. I was the one setting the schedule. As long as everything made it out frozen by Thursday, I was on task. It wasn't the daily routine that you get in a restaurant kitchen. And I was learning what it meant to like need to eat a lot. And I had not yet figured out that it needed to like be a lot of really good protein. I knew it needed to be a lot of vegetables. I've always eaten a lot of vegetables, always really liked vegetables, even as a kid. It's kind of weird. And I thought about it. I was like, a lot of my friends who were buying my stuff were friends from my old running group who had, really been on the career treadmill and had kids. I was like, they can't have that much more time than like a line cook does. Their lives are just as hectic, except it's coming from a million different directions instead of this just like one central focus that's like pulling you all over the place. And so it started to become really clear to me. I have not yet set down like hard nutritional goals for every single item. I do know like I have goals for, a certain weight of prepared protein, whether that's going to be beans or lentils in a vegan or vegetarian thing, or a meat product if it's going to be in a something for my omnivores. But I haven't set down like I promise you X grams of protein in every meal, but I do promise you a certain weight of cooked chicken or cooked beef or whatever. As I've developed more recipes, as I've gone from like, oh, this would be really fun to make, to no, this is going into heavy rotation. Like every 3 weeks, we're re-upping Sea Island red peas with pesto. I've really dialed in what I want as far as fresh vegetables, as far as the prepared things. And so now that's where I find myself spending more of my time, more of my energy is a combination of making sure that people get lots and lots of good veggies and that they are as local and as fresh as humanly possible. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I just find it very smart pivot on your part. Could you see yourself doing anything else? Like you've had a lot of jobs. Do you think this is sort of the last thing?
I would love for this to be the last thing. That would be amazing. When I sat down with my idea for this business, before I got as focused on the health side of it, when it was just recipes and seasonality, at that time, that was my big challenge. I said earlier that like February and March are the really tough times to be buying local. I started this business in March. So I was like, all right, how do I write recipes that are going to be adaptable year round to a variety of vegetables? Like I have some things that are summer only. I have a couple things that are like predominantly winter and fall dishes, but the majority of my stuff I can make with local veggies all year round. I joke that when I become the like Oprah Winfrey of locally sourced casseroles, it will be because there's a Dandelion Foods in Atlanta and Nashville and like Charlotte. I feel like, and this is something I've seen some of my farming friends, particularly Joe and Judith over at Love is Love, really tap into. There is our tiny micro markets, our farmers markets where we go once a week and we buy our veggies. There is Kroger and Publix. There's nothing in the middle. The farms that supply Kroger and Publix did not start out as the farms that are popping up once a week at a weekly farmers market. It's not a straight linear path to growth that way, which means that unfortunately, there's also not much of a space in the market for a medium-sized farm. They're not big enough to get good prices at a really big store. They're way too big. They couldn't move all the product they produce at a weekly farmers market or even a few weekly farmers markets. And so I want to be able to connect farmers to consumers as much as possible. And I love the idea of encouraging larger farmers that are not the supersized farms that we have today. There's a program out of Emory right now that's working on that. It's very, very cool. And I need to look up the name of it for y'all. But yeah.
Yeah, please do so we can link it.
Yeah. I hope this is also the last thing because I don't think I can go work for anyone else anymore. I am my favorite boss that I've ever had. Extremely like
oh, I knew it
tolerant.
Me too, buddy. Stella, I get you. I see you deep in your soul right now.
I'm like, sometimes you got to sleep and then you got to go to the gym and you'll make it up. It's cool. You know.
Although I do have to say, when you work for yourself, there's that whole idea of, yeah, maybe you sleep in and go to the gym when you want. But I've never worked harder in my entire life.
No. What I mean is you can sleep in and go to the gym, but you're coming home tonight at 11.
That's right.
Just be aware that there are trade-offs.
Yeah, there are definitely trade-offs, but at least it's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The flexibility is nice. And I try to pass that on to my staff as much as it is humanly possible to run a business and allow flexibility. But, it doesn't always go together.
No.
Because our patients don't want to come at 11 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning.
They're like, you were just telling me I need to sleep.
Yeah.
So, no, more seriously, something else that's been very helpful has been just the ability to really put my trust in the knowledge that I've built over the years. You know, when you are working for someone else, you are always trying to meet their expectations. And it's not necessarily that their expectations are unattainable or unreasonable, but they're not yours. And the background stress level of constantly like wondering, am I really doing this the right way, the way that my boss would want this done? I definitely underestimated what an effect that had. The day-to-day happiness is.
I think you should stop talking now, because
I have a comment that I'll withhold.
No, I love to hear it, because all of a sudden after this podcast, Kacy's going to be like, you know what? I'm starting my own business. And I'll be like, Stella, it is your fault.
Sorry, Kate.
Nope. I do not want to run my own business. I like having a decent amount of flexibility, and I do like my own standards and all that stuff. But I just there's no such thing as balance when you own your own business. I am not able to manage things when they're not balanced to a certain extent.
Thank God.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know. No. But it's real. It's real. Like for me, as being like a people pleaser, and I always want to do things the right way. And you never really know what that is for anybody else, because they have this whole theme park idea in their mind that you just have no idea what's even in there, but you're just guessing at it. Like, I hope this is good enough. So it's real. Yeah. I mean, and it's just a human thing. Like that, no matter how great and wonderful your boss is, and I have the best in the entire world.
Thanks for saying that, Kacy.
That's going to exist.
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. Well, so one of the things I'd like to ask is, in terms of your clientele, like who are you focusing on? So for me, it sounds like an active person, runners, triathletes, people who really want to get the most out of their food in terms of like nutrients and balancing meals and getting the right amount of protein that they need, et cetera, are your clients. Is that right?
Actually, I think my clients are a little more like the people who come and buy my food week after week after week. I would say they're more representative of a general public that can afford to pay like $8 to $9 for a meal. They're usually physically active. It's usually a part of their lives. They are usually working a lot. When I'm training my farmers market people, I'm like, if you see someone with a stroller, you are talking to them. You're starting a conversation because they need what you've got. I do find that the vast majority of the people who buy, and this is farmers markets, the website is a lot more balanced, are women, and they are women who are or have been working and raising kids long enough to know the value of their time. They're like, no, this saves me effort for like more than a couple hours over the course of a week. Those are the folks who I see every single week without fail.
Yeah.
It's generally professionals, folks with kids, people who are really busy, or people who are like me, who have like really bad executive functioning and don't understand how time works. So you just have to like give us food, just put it where we can get to it, and we'll come to it when we're ready.
I see you there too. I'll be like, oh man, it's 3:00.
Yeah. Oh God.
If I don't do food prep on Sundays, forget it. That's where your casseroles are great.
I usually have at least like 2 extra weekly salads kicking around any given refrigerator that I have access to at any given time. Just in case, just waiting.
Yeah.
Emergency salads.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't have to heat them up. Everything is made for the salads. It's not like dressed lettuces, because those would turn into green goo by the time my customers got them the next day. So it's always stuff that's meant to be like dressed and held, which means that it's also really convenient if you're like, I'm just eating as I can. Yeah.
Great. Well, Stella, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been great. Yeah. And so what is your website? And again, we'll link it, but what is your website that people can get food from and get to know you a little bit more and start to eat a little healthier?
Sure. The website is dandelionfood.store. We're on Instagram at Dandelion Food Store. And those are the best ways to get my stuff. If you need to see me in person. I'm at Morningside Farmers Market every Saturday. I've got a booth over at Oakhurst Farmers Market every Saturday. Those are both in the mornings. And then, we'll be at Grant Park this Sunday from 9 to 1. I realize now that I don't know when this is coming out. So I don't know if we'll be at Grant Park that Sunday, but if we're not at Grant Park, we'll be at Avondale Estates.
Got it. That's great.
From 10 to 1.
Perfect. And then do you have any athletic goals for this year?
Yes, I do. I'm so glad you asked. I just registered last week. I qualified for USA Triathlon Nationals.
All right.
And so I'm going to go try to set a PR in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee again. Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Milwaukee in August. I did a race in June in Tennessee, but it was in the mountains. So it wasn't super, super hot.
Was that Lake Logan by chance?
No, it was Lakeside of the Smokies.
Okay, gotcha.
Danforth, Tennessee.
Yeah, because that was the coolest temperature. It's also very cool, cool, dude. Yeah. But it was the coolest summer triathlon I've ever done, which was really nice on the run.
The half Ironman last year, I got talked into it to go to a race in Alaska because an old school friend had also gotten into triathlon. She's also going to nationals. She's on the elite team, and she is faster than I am. And she was like, you want to do a half Ironman? There's a really cool one in Fairbanks. And physically, very, very cool.
Very cool.
We got in the water and you had to swim to the start. And thank God you had to swim to the start because I put my face in the water. It was so cold with a wetsuit, obviously, that I immediately started hyperventilating. I was like, this is something different.
It's the wetsuits are great and they do their job, but no matter what, you got to put your face in that water. And I think 60 degrees is the coldest water I've ever swam in. And that was enough to take my breath away and to be like, well, I think we're just going to go get some brunch now and we'll forget about this little triathlon thing.
We didn't have to do this one. I didn't tell anybody. It's fine. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's my goal this year. I'll probably do another half Ironman in the fall afterwards, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Love that.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for coming today, Stella. This has been awesome.
Thanks for talking with me. Y'all have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks. You too.
You too. Thank you so much for listening today. We are so happy that you're here. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend. Even better, share it on social media because sharing is caring. And the more people we can reach, the better.
Another way you can help us out is by leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. So give us those 5 stars and tell us how awesome we are. Really, we love to hear how awesome we are. To support our work financially, you can also join our Patreon squad at patreon.com/morethanmiles, where for a few dollars a month, you can help us keep the show going and growing.
This season is sponsored by Fast Bananas. Why buy multiple subscriptions made for everyone when you can have one specifically crafted for runners? Fast Bananas has online yoga classes, strength training programs, meditations, recipes, communities to ask questions, and so much more. Check out Fast Bananas at fastbananas.com or follow them on Instagram at fastbananasrun.
Don't forget that training is so much more than miles.